and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and it's time for our team selection video. This time we are playing the wildcard chip for Game Week 34. Very excited to share my team with you guys today. So if you do enjoy this one, make sure you drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started with my Game Week 34 scores. Okay, so like many people not on a free hit in Game Week 34, I found myself a little disappointed with my scores. However, it wasn't so bad that I got a red arrow. I did come away with a green arrow, certainly so far, because technically the game week isn't over. We're assuming Erling Haaland is not going to play, and therefore I'd get Ait Nouri's 2-pointer off the bench. Not great, but hey, I guess it's better than nothing. So I think things have gone okay, despite the fact it could have been a big disaster. I think the big question was whether I would have Mateta in my team, but with Haaland not having the exact injury news about him pre-deadline, I didn't think it was worth taking the -4. How wrong I was on that one. But thankfully, a captaincy on Eberechi Eze has really bailed me out. So really happy I went with the differential captain, was brave enough to go through with that and pull the trigger, and therefore coming out with I think a pretty respectable score despite the circumstances. The one other disappointment, I suppose, was Neto not playing in that second game. He would have got a clean sheet in that game, which would have put me up to 100 points, but hey, there's no point crying over spilt milk. There's great opportunities going forward for wildcarders for this game week and beyond. Let's get started and have a look at my wildcard team. So the value of my wildcard team is 103.1 million. I've got 0.8 million in the bank. Nothing is nailed on. Nothing is locked until the deadline, and we will be doing some final tinkering over the next 24 hours or so. But I'll share with you what I've got right now, and I think it's a pretty sensible wildcard in general. We've got Petrovic starting off in goal. Don't really fancy the look of Gusto at the moment, with him potentially missing games through injury, and also his fitness in general is just not really at the level where he can be regularly playing 2 games per game week. So Petrovic, maybe a slightly safer option. I do think, despite Sanchez coming back to fitness, I think Petrovic has nailed himself down as the kind of Chelsea goalkeeper at this point. And even though a lot of Chelsea defenders maybe not scoring great points at the moment, Petrovic kind of surviving by basis of getting those save points. And against teams like Aston Villa and Spurs, there's definitely going to be saves to be had against these teams. And then after that, we've got West Ham. I think that's a decent fixture right now. And the double game week for Chelsea, I actually do kind of like. I kind of like this for Chelsea, and particularly would like to triple up on Chelsea for that team. So we will be going ahead with that one. So moving on into my defensive positions, we've got Pedro Porro first of all, and it looks like he is going to be fit and available for this game week. It's not guaranteed yet, but kind of looking at the rumors coming out of Spurs at the moment, it looks pretty decent. I think we can be pretty comfortable about that one. A little expensive at 5.8 million, but in terms of Spurs defenders, it's kind of him or nobody. And I think with no Doggy, it could actually give a little more license for Pedro Porro to go forward and get some more attacking returns if at all possible. Should be on some set pieces, with Madison being withdrawn from the team, substituted early in a lot of games as well, which is always going to be very useful. And yeah, in general, I don't love him for every game week necessarily, but having the double-double is very useful, and I think he's one of the few Spurs players that I'd actually be reasonably confident in. So playing a little bit of a numbers game there, but definitely a high upside pick. Guardiola is my next pick, another fairly high upside pick that I'm not, again, super confident in at the moment, because there was always a kind of question mark around rotation for the Man City defenders, and I wonder if going the Edison route in goal could be the other way I could go about getting that Manchester City defensive coverage in my team. But Guardiola is definitely a player who, when he has been starting, has been playing super high up on that left-hand side, essentially playing as a left winger, which has allowed him to get goals and assists and bonus points over the last few weeks in all competitions. You know, we've seen him get multiple attacking returns now, which is really quite nice. It's quite impressive to see. So against these next few fixtures, Forest and Wolves, definitely like the look of those, and even the double game week against Fulham and Spurs, 2 away fixtures, but certainly against Fulham, you would fancy a clean sheet there. It's just a case of minutes with Guardiola. Do I trust him for minutes? I think he should be probably good to play most of these games with no European football for Manchester City anymore, but I'm just not 100%, so we may change our mind on that one. And that brings us to Dan Burn, our final defensive pick in the starting 11 at least. It could go Burn, it could go Fabian Schär. I would love to have Trippier, but Trippier does not look like he's going to be available, at least for this game week. But what I really love about the Sheffield United fixture is the fact that we've got defenders who can score goals. Centre-backs and aerial threats always do well against against Sheffield United. We saw that in the reverse fixture when obviously Newcastle played against Sheffield United, and we saw the likes of Burn, Schär, Trippier all being involved in those goals because of the set piece threats that these players kind of have. And I think that's going to happen exactly the same thing again. In fact, I don't even mind a double up on Burn and Fabian Schär and cover both bases. That's definitely something I've thought about doing, and is something I still may do before deadline. However, there's just so many great Newcastle assets to go for at the moment, so I'm not fully confident about where I'm going to go with my Newcastle players. I think Burn at 4.5 million, technically he's got better underlying numbers than Schär at the moment. He's taking more shots, he's getting more in more dangerous aerial threat positions. Yes, Fabian Schär may have scored more points, but Burn is still the main target man in that Newcastle kind of set piece routine. So do like the look of him. I think at 4.5 million, he's an absolute bargain and a really, really nice, solid pick. Moving on into midfield, we've got Heung-min-Son. I think he's one of those nailed-on players that if you are on a wild card this week, or maybe if you're not even on a wild card this week, you just got to have him in your team. You've got to make sure you do find a way of getting him into your team. Arsenal and Chelsea, they're not great fixtures on paper, maybe the Arsenal game, but Son thrives in those games against teams like Arsenal, high line. He's got a great record against Arsenal, of course. Liverpool, another high line. Burnley and Manchester City, more high lines. And again, two teams that he has thrived against in the past, and Sheffield United to finish off the season. Hopefully by that point Sheffield United will have nothing to play for, and Son can absolutely go ballistic, go crazy, gets loads more points in that fixture. Yeah, nailed on pick, no doubt about it. Next up, a player who I'm not 100% sure on, but he's coming more and more of a staple of my wildcard drafts at the moment, and that's Bruno Fernandes, who plays against Burnley at home this week, which obviously is a decent fixture. Another great performance against Sheffield United, and his form is really, really improving. He's getting a couple of penalties as well, which is always very, very useful. So hopefully moving forward, he can continue his good run of form. We've got a double game week in game week 37 for him as well. He's one of those players who is nailed on. I know a lot of people may go cheap with Garnacho, but I think the difference between Bruno and Garnacho is quite significant. You could go for both of them potentially, but I think Bruno is the standout Manchester United player to pick at the moment. When you look at these fixtures, when you look at the form of the player, you look at the goal opportunities that he is having at the moment, really like the look of him. Phil Foden is the next pick, again with no European football. They don't see a reason why Foden can't just go through and play every game for the rest of the season. He is going to be super crucial for Man City's kind of prospects of winning the Premier League, with Arsenal really, really posing a bit of a challenge for Man City at the moment. So Foden's going to be really important there. Forest and Wolves, the next two fixtures. We love them, of course. And then the double game week and West Ham to finish off the season. Foden, just again, a pretty much, is he completely nailed on in my wildcard team? He's certainly up there. He really, really is. And I think he's definitely a player I'll be looking to have for this game week. I do wonder, to be fair, whether he gets a lot of minutes against Brighton tonight. Maybe that might put me off. But to be honest, unless he gets injured, I'm pretty much going to have Foden in my wildcard team. Which brings us to Cole Palmer, another nailed-on player in my team. And the latest news on Palmer is that he is back in full training. So he still is flagged in FPL with that illness. But as we know with illnesses, they don't usually last too long. And when a player is ill, typically they will be back the following game week. So I do expect Palmer to be back in action for this one with a little bit of rest behind him, which is nice, and he can get back to business and the amazing form that he's shown all season, being that elite FPL asset, particularly at that crazy good price. So Palmer, a lock in my team, absolutely, no doubt about it, and I'm not even worried about that flag anymore. I'm kind of hoping that the yellow Dorito of death is going to put off a lot of people from going for Palmer or captaining Palmer, but I'm now pretty confident that he's going to go through and play both games in full, which finishes off our midfield with Gordon. Now, he is probably the least nailed on player in my current team in the midfield position, in the attacker positions in general, to be fair. And the reason is not because I think he is a bad pick. I don't, but I do think there is a lot of midfielders to go for. And actually, there are so many midfielders that we would want to have in our FPL teams right now. Maybe something's got to give. And I feel like looking through my midfield, the one player I'd be most willing to sacrifice is probably Gordon. Not because he's a bad pick, but because I wouldn't mind having a second Newcastle defender in my team, with Newcastle improving defensively, have great defensive fixtures, and I think real opportunities for the likes of Burn and Schär to capitalise on this Sheffield United fixture in in particular. I like the Brighton fixture in the double game week for Newcastle as well. Another perspective, clean sheet there at home. And yeah, just in general, maybe Gordon can make way. At the same time, Gordon's home form has been phenomenal all season, and Sheffield United conceding a lot of goals and a lot of chances again and again and again. So, in general, what do I do? Do I go for Gordon and stick with the single Newcastle defence, or do I use this as an opportunity to improve my defence where there's so many players I'm not fully convinced by, like Guardiola, for example, and you'll see on my bench as well, not 100% convinced by my defenders. Can I go for a second Newcastle defender where I feel more confident in, and maybe move Gordon to a Brennan Johnson, which is something I'm very, very tempted by, going for Brennan Johnson in this team, because he's putting up the best numbers in Spurs at the moment. Obviously, we've got the double-double for Spurs, which is very nice. And I think definitely Johnson, if things do go wrong, if he does start, getting less minutes, he's one of those players that could be quite easily transferred out and give you a little bit of an opening to pick a new midfielder, maybe an emerging midfielder for game week 37, should that happen. Garnacho, for example, is a player you could move Johnson to. You could move him to Richarlison or Maddison if their form improves, if Richarlison's injury, subsides and he can start playing games regularly. And you can make a move kind of like that could work pretty well as well. So I do like the idea of leaving that fifth midfield slot open with Johnson in the short term, and then going forward, maybe going for someone else. But at the same time, I would rather have Johnson. I'd rather have Gordon than Johnson, despite Johnson's double game week, because Johnson has the worst fixtures by a considerable margin. One of them is Arsenal, for heaven's sake. And it's just that the idea of getting that second Newcastle defender really appeals to me, and the extra fixture from Johnson. Maybe that's the way to go. I need to think about it. I need to think about that one. In up the forward positions, we're playing with two forwards right now. Isak is the first one, super obvious, pretty much a lock on this wildcard team. I think most people on the wildcard right now will probably agree with this one, that Isak is staying in the team. Despite Wilson coming back to fitness and featuring in game week 34, Isak should still be nailed on given the amazing form that he has shown this season. And, Wilson is never a player who can play too many games because of that injury kind of situation he always finds himself in, to be honest. But fixture's good. Sheffield United, Burnley, great opportunities there for Isak. Double game week against Brighton and Manchester United in particular, which is a really good fixture if you are an attacker. And finishing off the season with Brentford, and Brentford obviously another pretty weak defence in the Premier League at the moment. So yeah, plenty of opportunities for Isak and Gordon alike, which is what it makes so difficult what I do with Gordon, because I'd like to have them all. I really would like to have them all. I'd like to have an additional midfielder, really, but hey, that's not how the game of FPL works. Which brings us to our final player in the starting 11. It is going to be Nicholas Jackson, whether you like it or not, and I know a lot of you guys do not like it, but hey, I want to take a bit of a gamble here on a player who gets an insane amount of chances to score, because he really, really does. Aston Villa and Spurs, I actually think it's a fairly decent opportunity for goals, and when you're playing alongside Cole Palmer, you never know what is possible. And Jackson, even though his finishing hasn't been great, I think his general gameplay has been very, very good, and I think that's half of the battle. He just needs to slot away some of his chances. Now, a lot of people say that his finishing is bad, it's not great, but he has still scored a decent amount of goals this season, and you have to have those opportunities. Like I say, that's half the battle, is just getting the opportunities to score, generating that XG, and then after that, it's about whether you can finish them off or not. But given enough chances, any player will score goals, and that's what we've seen with Jackson this season. And combining with Cole Palmer, I think, is only going to be a good thing for him. When Palmer is back, these two are going to combine, and points are just naturally going to come for Jackson, whether it's just playing a simple pass to Palmer and Palmer doing his magic or something else. But there's going to be goals over this double game week, and the game week after that, or double game week after that as well, and the West Ham fixture, who they've been really poor recently. I just think these two players can combine very well. Palmer is going to be obviously the big dog, but Jackson definitely is going to have some opportunities here. And yes, a lot of people will doubt him, but I think I'd rather take that risk, be in it to win it, because that's what you got to do with FPL at the end of the day. And I think he could be a big differential on those not using the wildcard right now, who may be less willing to go for Jackson as a punt for this game week. But as far as I'm concerned, looking through the Chelsea players to go for right now, Petrovic, yeah, I think he's probably the better defender, with Gusto the only other option. I'm a little bit doubtful about him. Outside of that, if you're going to triple up on Chelsea, where do you go? Obviously Palmer. After that, Jackson is the next obvious player to have. I don't really see where else I would go. I mean, particularly as those forward slots are kind of difficult to fill at the moment, with double game week players in particular. When you're targeting that bench boost in game week 37, like, you know, there's not too many double game week attackers. Højlund is probably the only other player with a double game week in 37 that you can feel confident in. João Pedro, I guess maybe. Højlund not really showing form, though. I think Jackson is probably the pick of the bunch, to be honest. So he's staying in the team. Let's go to the bench, guys. Onana, I don't really like the Manchester United defense right now, but Onana, fairly decent shot stopper, and he's making plenty of saves. So I think that's going to be certainly half of the battle when it comes to picking up points in double game week 37, where I would be looking to include Onana as part of my bench boost. Højlund is on the bench. I don't think he's going to start in game week 35, which is a blessing in disguise, because actually, if Højlund was available, then I'd probably have to bench, I guess, Foden, which I would not feel comfortable with doing at all. So yeah, holding on to Højlund for this game week, I think actually could potentially be beneficial. Apparently his injury is not long term. He is expected to be back reasonably soon. Hopefully we'll get more information about Højlund over the next 24 hours or so, and we'll be updating you guys on everything involving Højlund, Palmer, Pedro Porro, and everyone else in tomorrow's final decisions video, where we'll go and look at all of the press conferences and latest injury news and rumors and photos and stuff like that. So yeah, stay tuned for that one. But for now, Højlund not expected to play. Blessing in disguise. We can play Foden instead, and we can hold Højlund on for the following game week. And actually, when you look through the rest of the season for Manchester City, their games are quite well spaced apart. So there is going to be recovery time for players like Højlund to come back into the team as soon as possible. Gabriel is my next player here. I think Gabriel is mostly in this team to cover game week 36 because he plays against Bournemouth there, which I think, you know, is probably a good opportunity for yet another clean sheet for Arsenal. We know how many clean sheets they're keeping this season. And actually, even in 37 against Manchester United, I don't mind Gabriel, but I will at least have the option to potentially transfer Gabriel out for another double game week defender. But guys, honestly, how many double game week defenders are there out there that we'd be seriously interested in? Not that many. And we have got Dunk to finish us off. The reason I'm picking him is because he's predicted the most points pretty much out of the game week 37 defenders. He's got a fairly decent amount of goal threat, and Brighton's defensive numbers have been decent. They've been looking to keep things fairly tight at the back, not conceding too many chances, particularly against some of the weaker teams, which I think could give us opportunities for clean sheets in the double. But you know, the attacking returns are pretty nice as well as a potential for Dunk. I don't know. Well, let's see what happens there. Van Hecker could be another alternative if I wanted to go a bit cheaper than Dunk there. But yeah, I think the only player I'm kind of missing is probably another Manchester United defender, Dalot, Maguire, someone like that. But as I say, I'm not super confident about the Manchester United defense right now, and I'd rather go for Onana, who's going to get save points, than rely on potential attacking returns from Manchester United defenders, because realistically, that is what we would have to rely on. We'd have to rely on attacking returns to get too much from those Manchester United guys, and I don't really know if it's coming necessarily. The attacking numbers amongst the likes of Maguire and Dalot haven't been super high, despite a couple of returns recently in all competitions. So yeah, this is how I am set up right now. I think the team looks reasonably strong. It's a little bit boring, and I wonder if I can change things around. I wonder if I can squeeze a third Spurs player into my team, but if I'm totally honest, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go for my Spurs player. It would be Brendan Johnson or nobody. If Richarlison is back fit, then I probably just dodge Johnson completely because of the minutes risk. And outside of that, you know, I don't want to double up on the defense, particularly. I think, you know, Spurs are a pretty weak defense with pretty weak fixtures from a defensive point of view. I mean, look at these fixtures. You expect Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and certainly Man City to all score against Spurs. Maybe we can go for that third Spurs player in game week 37 to try and target that Burnley and Sheffield United fixture. You know, could we go for Romero potentially in game week 37? Possibly. You know, Gabriel to Romero for the double game week. Possibly. I don't know. There's definitely some options there, but I'm not convinced by any of them. And defense, I think, is the big problem, really, for wildcarders this game week, and just for anyone this game week. Like, who do you go for? There's not great options out there. So, yeah, we'll stick with what we got for now. I like this team. I definitely think there is some changes that can be made, and there possibly will be, which we will keep you guys updated on if there are any changes between now and deadline. But we do need to throw a captain's armband on a player, and that player is going to be Cole Palmer. Straight up. Yeah, really, really obvious to me. And again, I hope that flag on him, that exclamation mark in the yellow triangle. I hope that puts some people off. I really, really do, because I think he is by far the best captain for this game week. Son is definitely also a possibility, so the vice captain is on him, but I'm backing Palmer ahead of Son at this moment, given the form of the two players. It's really quite a significant difference between the two, which kind of completes my team. This is what it looks like, and I'd like to, if I may, take you through week by week what this team would look like for each week, particularly that game week 37 bench boost. So of course this is what my current draft is looking like in the Fantasy Football Hub My Team tool. We've got a 98% team rating actually, which is pretty high actually. Of course, if you guys want to check out this tool and start planning your team week by week, if you're on a wildcard right now, this tool is going to be particularly useful for you, as you're going to get all of the predicted points there, get some alternative options that you may consider putting in your FPL team. Of course, they have the AI transfer tool, which helps you navigate each week with some transfer suggestions that you might want to go for. But yeah, most of all, I just want to show you week by week what this team looks like. So going into game week 36, things are going to look a little bit different. I'll probably look to bench Jackson and play Erling Haaland. Also could consider benching Fernandes away against Crystal Palace. I don't think it's an amazing fixture, but I think the penalty factor, the set piece factor, maybe edges me towards Fernandes, if you like. Of course, Pedro Porro against Liverpool, I would be looking to bench him. Son against Liverpool, though, I have no problem with him. Gabriel against Bournemouth, I think will be a good opportunity, with many wildcarders actually ditching their Arsenal assets. I'd like to have at least one. I know probably a few people have said over the last few videos about wildcards, you know, you're going for no Arsenal players, you're going for no Liverpool players. I think at this point, going for no Liverpool players is okay. I think the one Arsenal player is, you know, going to be good to have for game week 36, because we do have to remember, I know we're hyper focused on 35 and 37, but 36 is definitely also a week that we have to play FPL for. You know, it's not like FPL in game week 36 doesn't exist. We still do need to consider it, and that's exactly what we will be doing just a little bit. And I think most players are going to be good for that, but Arsenal players, it would be nice to have them as well. In terms of Onana versus Petrovic, not really sure which one to go for, but I'm edging towards Petrovic just because of the fact that Elise and Eze and Mateta right now are just on fire, and I would not really want to be facing them right now as a goalkeeper. Which brings us to game week 37, and this is where things look hopefully pretty nice. This is what a bench boost would look like. So we would, this is, again, assumes that we've made no transfers or used transfers for emergency purposes only, which ideally that's what I'd like to do. Only use transfers in a case of an emergency, you know, an injury, because one injury for a 15-man squad that you're looking to bench boost is, you know, that causes trouble. You know, only needs one player to get injured in game week 35 or 36, and I'm going to be forced to make a transfer, basically. So, yeah, saving that transfer, hopefully rolling the two transfers into game week 38, though. But game week 37, this is what my starting 11 would look like, and then we'd have a bench boost of Onana against Arsenal and Newcastle United, both at home, but both opportunities for save points. We've got Jackson here against Forest and Brighton. Quite like the look of that one, to be fair. Burn against Brighton and Manchester United, could be some opportunities there, particularly against Brighton, where I hope that Newcastle will keep a clean sheet. And finally, Gabriel, who may make do. If I don't have any other injury problems in my team and I have a spare free transfer, I guess at that point I would consider moving Gabriel to, you know, someone else. Not really sure who at this point, because the defenders in game week 37 don't look great. So maybe you just do hold on to Gabriel through to game week 38, which could be pretty nice. But yeah, it's going to depend if there's any injury problems or not. I might have a luxury spare transfer to use, and if so, Gabriel to a double game week defender might be the play. Maybe we go for another Brighton defender, Van Hecker. Maybe we go for someone else, maybe a Manchester United defender, Dallo, Maguire. I can't really think of too many other players outside of that one, to be honest, though. Any suggestions, guys? Maybe, like I say, another Spurs defender, Romero, maybe targeting that Sheffield United game for kind of aerial threat goals, set piece goals with Romero in the final game week, and then just hopefully getting something clean sheet against Burnley potentially there as well. Never know what could happen against Man City. I suppose as an Arsenal fan, I will be supporting Spurs against Manchester City, weirdly, in game week 37, so that could be double jeopardy there. And that brings us to game week 38. Should have two spare transfers to use at this point. Would maybe be looking to get in an additional Arsenal player. I think the obvious transfer out for game week 38 would be Bruno Fernandes. So I could do something like Bruno Fernandes out for Saka or Havertz or someone like that. And yeah, after that, Not really sure. Depends who I fancy. Like De Bruyne for an interesting punt. Maybe upgrading Foden to De Bruyne. We could go back in on Eze against Aston Villa. We could go for maybe a Brentford player potentially. Aston Villa player. They play against Palace away, so I'm not super keen on that one. But yeah, gonna keep my options open on that one. To be honest, I think probably Arsenal will be the main team I'll be looking to target going into Game Week 38 though. And that pretty much concludes my plan for the rest of the season. Of course, everything is variable. Everything can change as weeks go by. So much changes so fast in football, and that's why we love it so much. So yeah, rough plan, always good to have, but yeah, I'm excited to see how it all unfolds, and maybe I can get some of that amazing run of fortune that free hitters got in Game Week 34. Maybe that can come my way for the bench boost, or maybe this Game Week as well in Game Week 35. So yeah, let's see. But I do appreciate you guys watching today. If you did enjoy, make sure you do drop a like. Do subscribe if you're new around here as well. It is massively, massively appreciated. And we will be back tomorrow for a final decisions video. We'll be going through all of the final news and big questions that you guys have ahead of the deadline. Feel free to check out another video. 100 experts was uploaded yesterday, and there was some really nice data in that video for you guys to check out. But aside from that, thank you so much for watching once again, and I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.